All right. Yeah.
Hey, welcome, friends, to today's meeting at the United Lodge of Theosophists in Washington, D.C. area. Today, we have a talk on Mahatmas as ideals and facts. But first, we'll get started with reading the Declaration of the United Lodge of Theosophists.
The Declaration. The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification in practice of those principles, through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity, without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization, and it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all.
Thank you. Next, we'll touch on the three fundamental propositions of Theosophy, and these are the underpinnings of everything in the philosophy, and they were put in the proem of The Secret Doctrine by H.P. Blavatsky. And they can be summarized as deity, law, and consciousness. So the first one, deity, this is not like a being. This is an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle upon which all human speculation is impossible because it transcends the power of human conception. And it's beyond the range and reach of thought. It's an absolute reality that antecedes any type of manifestation or conditions or beings. It's been termed an infinite and eternal cause, the causeless cause, unconscious and unknowable. Therefore, has been symbolized as beingness rather than being. And it is the one reality and source from which everything comes from. The second fundamental proposition, law, is really points to that of cycles. And it states that the eternity of the universe is, as a boundless plane, is periodically the playground of numberless universes, incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars and the sparks of eternity. And what this is saying is that there is the appearance and disappearance of worlds and universes, like a regular tidal ebb of flux and reflux. And the idea of cycles is so visible, so observable by physical science, we can see it even within our own lives, in the alternation of day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking. And it's a fact so common and perfectly universal and without exception that we can see it as a fundamental law of the universe. And the third one, consciousness, states that consciousness develops with form. There's a evolution to consciousness, And it states that the identity of all souls from the universal oversoul goes on an obligatory pilgrimage, every spark of that soul, through the cycle of incarnation or necessity in accordance with cyclic law and karmic law. And that no spiritually divine soul can have an independent conscious existence before that spark has passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world and acquired individuality, first by natural impulse and then through self-induced and self-devised efforts. And in this way, through a numberless series of incarnations, it ascends through all the degrees of intelligence from the lowest to the highest, from mineral, plant, up to the holiest archangel, that of a Dhyani Buddha. And this principle admits of no special privileges or gifts in man, save those won by his own efforts and merit through a long series of reincarnations. And that explains all the differences of intelligence and awareness we see in the different forms of life everywhere. So those are the three fundamental propositions behind the philosophy, and it will open it up to any questions or thoughts. And if there aren't any, we can continue.
Continue?
Sure.
Okay. So today's devotional reading is from The Voice of the Silence, starting at the bottom of page 70. No conqueror of sins, once that of Savani had crossed the seventh path, all nature thrills with joyous awe and feels subdued. The silver star now twinkles out the news to the night blossoms. The streamlet to the pebbles ripples out the tail. Dark ocean waves will roar it to the rocks surfs bound. Scent-laden breezes sing it to the vales, and stately pines mysteriously whisper, "A master has arisen, a master of the day. He standeth now like a white pillar to the west, upon which face the rising sun of the thought eternal poureth forth its first most glorious waves. His mind, like a becalmed and boundless ocean, spreadeth out in the shoreless space. He holdeth life and death in his strong hand. Yea, he is mighty, the living power made free in him, that power which is himself, can raise the tabernacle of illusion high above the gods, above great Brahm and Indra. Now he shall surely reach his great reward. Shall he not use the gifts which it confers for his own rest and bliss, his well-earned weal and glory, he, the subduer of the great delusion? Nay, O thou candidate for nature's hidden lore, if one would follow in the steps of the holy Tathagata, those gifts and powers are not for self. Wouldst thou thus dam the waters born on Sumeru? Shalt thou divert the stream of for thy own sake, or send it back to its prime source along the crest of cycles? If thou wouldst have the stream of hard-earned knowledge, of wisdom heaven-born, remain sweet-running waters, thou shouldst not leave it to become a stagnant pond. No, if of Amitabha, the boundless age, thou wouldst become a co-worker, then thou must shed the light acquired, like to the Bodhisattvas twain, upon the span of all the three worlds. Know that the stream of superhuman knowledge and the Deva wisdom thou hast won must, from thyself, the channel of a lyre, be poured forth into another bed. Know, O Narjol, thou of the secret path, its pure fresh waters must be used to sweeter make the ocean's bitter waves, that mighty sea of sorrow formed by the tears of men. Alas, once thou hast become like the fixed star in the highest heaven, that bright celestial orb must shine forth from the spatial depths for all, save for itself. Give light to all, but take from none. Alas, once thou hast become like a pure snow in the mountain vales, cold and unfeeling to the touch, warm and protective to the seed that sleepeth beneath its bosom. 'Tis now that snow which must receive the biting frost, the northern blasts, thus shielding them from the sharp and cruel tooth, the earth that holds a promised harvest, a harvest that'll feed the hungry. Self-doomed to live through future kalpas, unthanked and unperceived by man, wedged as a stone with countless other stones which form the guardian wall, such is thy future at the seventh gate thou passest. Built by the hands of many masters of compassion, raised by the torches, by the blood cemented, it shields mankind, since man is man, protecting it from further and far greater misery and sorrow. Withal man sees it not, will not perceive it, nor will he heed the word of wisdom, for he knows not. But thou hast heard it, thou knowest all, O thou of eager guileless soul, and thou must choose. And with that, we'll move on to our talk.
Thank you. Today's talk is Mahatmas as Ideals and Facts, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Mahatmas as Ideals and Facts. The whole sweep, meaning, and possibility of evolution are contained in the word Mahatma. The word comes from Maha, meaning great, and Atma, meaning soul, and both compounded into one word refers to those great souls who have triumphed before us, not because they are made of different stuff than we are, nor do they belong to some strange family. They are those who, by special training and education, have evolved the higher faculties and have attained spiritual knowledge. Through a process of self-evolution, the Mahatma trains these faculties over a number of incarnations, although comparatively speaking, they are relatively few. We are also on that same path of self-evolution, and in time we will also evolve the higher faculties as we pass through a numberless series of reincarnations, gain experience, and awaken our dormant spiritual faculties. What is a Mahatma? Reincarnation, karma, the sevenfold division, retribution, reward, struggle, failure, success, illumination, power, and a vast embracing love for mankind. All of these lie within that single word. Every human soul emerges from the unknown, begins to work in and with matter, is reborn again and again, makes karma, develops 6 vehicles for itself, meets retribution for sin and punishment for mistakes, grows strong by suffering, succeeds in bursting through the gloom, is enlightened by true illumination, grasps power, retains charity, expands with love for orphaned humanity, and thenceforth helps all others who remain in darkness, until all may be raised up to the level of the higher self, the knower in each of us. Mahatmas are also considered to be the guiding forces behind human spiritual evolution, because often working behind the scenes, they help humanity progress on its journey towards enlightenment. Evolution is not just a physical, biological, or intellectual process, but a spiritual one as well. All human beings are on a path of self-evolution, moving towards higher states of consciousness and the awakening of latent spiritual faculties, which, when fully developed, eventually leads to a knowledge of the archetypal planes of existence and the ultimate realization of the unity of all of life. The Mahatma, or Dhyani Buddha, embodies the culmination of this journey, representing the highest potential for human spiritual evolution that we are aware of. Just as human beings evolve in terms of physical form and intellect over time, they also develop spiritually. The goal of spiritual evolution is to become one with the divine source, the divine monad. And this journey is not just for some beings, it's the journey we are all on. In fact, evolution demands that we progress, and such beings as Mahatmas should exist, or there's a gap in the chain. The highest known state of spiritual liberation, Nirvana, is not regarded by the Mahatma as the final goal. Upon reaching this supreme level of freedom, marked by a release from illusion, the end of suffering, and full union with the divine, the Mahatma faces a profound choice. He or she may choose to enter Nirvana, embracing ultimate peace and liberation. However, out of deep compassion for humanity and all sentient beings still progressing along the spiritual path, the Mahatma may instead choose to forgo this final rest. By doing so, they remain in existence to guide and support all others in their journey towards enlightenment, helping them to attain this same state of liberation. The act of remaining behind in the realm of suffering to guide and uplift others is viewed as one of the greatest acts of selflessness conceivable. A Mahatma chooses to forgo their own rest in nirvana and instead dedicate themselves to helping others on their spiritual journey. This act of selflessness is a conscious decision to live for the greater good, the welfare of all beings, the totality of humanity, and even, one could say, the entire cosmos.
Hi, Kathy.
Yes?
Quick question. Are you still on slide 1 or are you moving the slides?
I am moving through the slides. Is it not working?
No.
Okay, let me start over.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. Thanks for telling me.
You're on slide 2, correct?
Okay, yeah, slide 2 is, whoops, what is a Mahatma?
Yeah.
It seems when I do the slideshow, it doesn't work. So I guess
Yeah.
I have to look at it this way. So yeah, this covers what is a Mahatma, that they're a great soul. And the third slide is about evolution, that they're the highest potential, highest stage of human evolution that we're aware of. And then we were just on the Mahatma's choice.
Okay.
Once they get to the ultimate highest level, the decision. So for the Mahatma, it's not about a personal desire for recognition or spiritual power, but the utter renunciation of personal desires in favor of serving others. This is the true grandeur and majesty of these beings, their complete freedom from ego, and their willingness to sacrifice their own ultimate freedom to bring all others along the same path. The sacrifice of a Mahatma could be described as the renunciation of personal desire and the complete subordination of the personal self to the needs of others. Theosophy shows that the Mahatmas, having reached this stage of profound spiritual development, are aware of the impermanence of material existence and the illusory nature of the personal self. Yet they choose to remain within this illusory space, knowing that their mission is to help all of humanity to transcend it. This level of selflessness is not a simple, single moral choice. It's a deep spiritual commitment that requires the highest degree of compassion and unwavering dedication to the collective evolution of all beings over many, many lifetimes. Therefore, it is made up of many moments of choice. The majesty and grandeur of this choice are staggering in their implications. A Mahatma who has reached the pinnacle of spiritual development could enter nirvana and transcend the human realm forever, yet they choose not to do so for the sake of others. And this is the ultimate sacrifice. the willingness to remain bound to the suffering of humanity to help in order to guide and help others. Such a sacrifice comes from the pinnacle of spiritual maturity and through the possession of an unshakable will. These are just some of the powers required to make such a decision. The Mahatma acts from a place of deep compassion and love for all sentient beings. The Mahatma is marked by the purest intention and the purest selflessness that underpins evolution. In this context, spiritually experienced beings like Mahatmas are necessary to guide humanity's evolution. They are like our older brothers. Their wisdom, experience, and mastery of higher realms makes them the masters and custodians of spiritual signs, powers, and progress, leading us towards the ultimate goal ourselves. One might view the Mahatmas as intermediaries between humanity and higher spiritual realms. They provide teachings, spiritual insight, and guidance to advanced students and aspirants on the path of spiritual growth. They are described as being able to contact and manipulate energies on a level far beyond that of ordinary human beings, capable of wielding spiritual forces that assist in the awakening of humanity's potential. In the scheme of evolution, the existence of such beings is necessary because embodying a higher level of consciousness, they act as a bridge between humanity and the divine. Mahatmas, furthermore, are part of a chain of enlightened beings who have reached this ultimate state of spiritual realization and now function as guides for humanity's collective spiritual journey. They are part of the Great White Brotherhood, as it has been called, a group of advanced beings who, though invisible to the majority of humanity, work to assist in the spiritual development of mankind. Their existence is seen as part of the natural law of evolution, providing humanity with the wisdom needed to evolve. Remember, this journey begins with natural impulse and then progresses through individual self-induced and self-devised efforts. Then there is the stage when one becomes a chela and pledges oneself to a teacher or Mahatma, learning as much as possible on a progressive journey of awakening. Every soul undergoes a process of self-purification and development through numerous lifetimes, guided and checked by the law of karma. As individuals progress on their spiritual journey, they move closer to realizing their true nature, and the presence of Mahatmas is seen as a natural part of this process. The Mahatmas are believed to have worked through countless cycles of reincarnation themselves, mastering all the stages of spiritual evolution. And as such, they serve as living examples of what humanity can achieve, making their existence a key factor in evolutionary progress. And the term the great work is used to describe the spiritual evolution of humanity and its return to unity with the divine. What are some differences between humans and Mahatmas? The occult doctrine, so far as it is given out, shows that the first three principles in man, the body, astral body, and prana, die more or less at the time of physical death. The fourth principle, kama, the body of desire, together with the lower portions of the fifth principle of lower manas, in which resides the animal propensities, has kamaloka for its abode, where it suffers the throes of disintegration in proportion to the intensity of those desires. It is the higher manas, the pure man, which is associated with the sixth and seventh principles, that of buddhi and atma, that goes into devachan to enjoy a period of rest and bliss before the individual reincarnates again, this time as a higher individuality. An entity that is passing through occult training in its successors gradually paralyzes the lower passions and desires. In each incarnation, this individual has less and less of that lower manas until there arrives a time when the person can act wholly through the higher manas. Such a being is then of an entirely elevated character and is centered in the higher individuality. This is when such a person may be said to have become a Mahatma. At the time of physical death for a Mahatma, all the lower four principles perish without any suffering, for these are, in fact, to him like a piece of apparel which he puts on and off at will. The real Mahatma, then, is not his physical body, but that higher manas which is inseparably linked to the Atma, and its vehicle, the sixth principle of Buddhi, a union effected by him or her through a series of lives, through rigorous methods of training that comprise an evolution, a self-evolution, as laid down by the occult philosophy. Therefore, when people express a desire to see a Mahatma, they really do not seem to understand what they're asking for. How can they, by their physical eyes, hope to see that which transcends physical sight? Is it the body, a mere shell or mask they crave to see? And supposing they see the body of a Mahatma, how can they know that behind the mask is concealed an exalted entity? By what standard are they to judge whether the Maya or illusion before them reflects the image of a true Mahatma? Higher things can be perceived only by a sense pertaining to those higher things. Whoever wants to see a real Mahatma must use his intellectual and spiritual sight. He must so elevate his manas, or mind, that its perception will be clear of all the mists created by Maya or illusion, and these can be dispelled. His vision will then be bright, and he will see the Mahatmas wherever he may be, for being merged into the sixth and seventh principles, which are ubiquitous and omnipresent, the Mahatmas may be said to be everywhere. But at the same time, just as we may be standing on a mountaintop and have within our sight the whole plain, and yet not be cognizant of any particular tree or spot, because from that elevated position all below is nearly identical, and as our attention may be drawn to something which may be dissimilar to its surroundings, so in the same manner, although the whole of humanity is within the mental vision of the Mahatmas, they cannot be expected to take special note of every human being unless that human being, by his or her special acts, draws their particular attention. The highest interest of humanity as a whole is their special concern, for they have identified themselves with the universal soul which runs through humanity, and he or she who would draw their attention must do so through that soul which pervades everywhere. The higher individuality of man, composed of higher manas, as said, merged with the sixth and seventh principle, or Buddhi, and Atma, should work as a unity, and then only can the man or woman obtain divine wisdom, for divine things can be sensed only by divine faculties. Thus, the desire which should prompt one to apply for chelaship is to so far understand the operations of the law of cosmic evolution as will enable one to work in harmonious accord with nature, instead of going against its purposes through ignorance. There are several varieties of believers in Mahatmas, Mr. Judge states. Some believe in their existence without wavering. Others believe unwaveringly, but are afraid to tell of their belief. A few believe, but they are always thinking that they must be able to say that they've set eyes on a Mahatma before they can infuse their belief into others. And a certain number deliberately hide the belief as a sort of individual possession and separate themselves from other mortals who have never heard of adepts, or who, having heard, scoff at the notion. Those unfortunate persons who are ever trying to measure exalted men and sages by the conventional rules of a transition civilization such as ours, or who are seemingly afraid of a vast possibility for mankind and therefore deny the existence of Mahatmas, may well be left to themselves and to time. For it is more than likely that they will fall into the general belief when it is formed, as it surely will be in the course of no long time. For a belief in Mahatmas is a common property of the whole race, and all the efforts of all the men of empirical science and dogmatic religion can never kill out the soul's own memory of its past. Mr. Judge says that we should declare our belief in the Mahatmas, while at the same time demand no one's adherence. It is not necessary to give out the name of any of the Mahatmas, for a name is an invention of a family. To name these beings, then, is no proof, and to seek for mystery names is to invite condemnation and profanation. The ideal without the name is large and grand enough for all purposes. Some years ago, the adepts wrote and said to HPB and to several persons involved in the Theosophical movement that more help could be given to the movement in America because the fact of their existence was not concealed from motives of either fear nor doubt. This statement, of course, carries with it the conclusion that where, from fear of schools or religion, the members had not referred much to the belief in Mahatmas, the power to help them was for some reason inhibited. And this is an interesting point and brings up the question, can the power of the Mahatmas to help for any cause be inhibited? The answer is it can. But why? All effects on every plane are the result of forces already set in motion and must ever flow from the causes in which they are wrapped up. If the channel through water is meant to flow is stopped up, the water will not run. But if a clear channel is provided, the current will pass through. Occult help from the Mahatmas requires a channel just as much as any other help does. And the fact that the currents to be used are occult makes the need for a channel greater. The people to be acted on must take part in making the channel or line for the force to act. For if they will not have it, then the Mahatmas cannot give it. It must be aroused within oneself and within groups of people. As we are dealing with the mind and nature of man, we have to throw out the words which will arouse the ideas connected with the forces we desire to have employed. In this case, the words are those which bring up the doctrine of the existence of adepts, Mahatmas, and masters of wisdom. Hence the value of the declaration of our belief. It arouses dormant ideas in others, and it opens up a channel in the mind, and it serves to make the conducting lines for the forces to use which the Mahatmas wish to give out. Many a young man or woman who could never hope to see great modern professors of science has been excited to action and moved to self-help and impelled to seek for knowledge by having heard that such beings as Mahatmas actually exist and are human beings. Without stopping to ask if the proof of their living in any particular continent is complete, men have still sought to follow their example. Shall we not take advantage of the same law of the human mind and let the vast power of the Lodge of Mahatmas work with our assistance and not against our opposition, doubt, or fear? Those who are devoted know how they have had unseen help, which showed itself in results. Those who fear may take courage, for they will find that not all their fellow beings are devoid of an underlying belief in the possibilities outlined by the doctrine of the existence of Mahatmas. And if we look over the work of the world, we find wherever people boldly avow their belief and are not afraid to speak of this high ideal, the interest in theosophy is awake, the work goes on, and people are benefited. To the contrary, where there are constant doubts, ceaseless asking for material proof, incessant fear of what the world or science or friends will think, there the work is dead, the field is not cultivated, and the people receive no benefit. Very wisely, as an occultist, Jesus told his disciples that they must give up all and follow him. We must similarly give up the desire to save ourselves and acquire the opposite one, the wish to save others. Let us remember the story of Arjuna, who, entering heaven and finding that his dog was not admitted and some of his friends in hell, refused to remain and said that while one creature was out of heaven, he would not enter it. This is true devotion and solidarity, and this joined to an intelligent declaration of belief in the great initiation of the human race will lead to results of magnitude, will call out the forces that are behind, will prevail against hell itself and all that now strives to retard the progress of the human soul. From William Q. Judge's article, The Adept in Modern Science, the modern critic asks, why do not these adepts come out to satisfy our curiosity if they are men? And this question is out of the same spirit that creates the sensational, vulgar, and prying newspaper articles which spread before the public because it is called for by the public, the private details of everyone's existence. Secondly, why do not they appear and destroy evil if they have great powers? The Mahatmas have replied that there is no power to destroy the evil man has produced, but in the efforts he himself makes for purification. Why not come and wipe out all errors? And why not multiply food in times of famine? The answers are the following. First, the nature of humanity at present is the product of evolution, and only evolution conducted in an orderly manner can alter by perfecting, refining, and purging. Furthermore, it is not granted just for the asking. One must purify one's nature and cultivate the higher virtues. Each person has to do this for themselves. Second, it is ridiculous for one to demand that the adepts multiply food when we all know there is at all times enough food to feed all of the hungry. It is by reason of human greed that it's not properly distributed. Third, even if food were multiplied by some individuals, those who did it would be imprisoned and the charge of interfering with trade or some similar legal thing might follow. Fourth, no one can disprove the claims that some adepts have multiplied food in some situations. And we've heard of examples of this, like in the Bible, because Jesus was considered an initiate and an occultist. Fifth, though the adepts have great powers, they have disclaimed the power to alter human nature in any other way than through the processes of natural evolution and always strictly under a rigid law of justice. They act under the law of karma at all times and cannot interfere with the karma of another. Sixth, and lastly, the Mahatmas do not yet appear publicly and proclaim themselves to the world for the reasons just stated, and also because the cycle must run its course, since if they proclaim themselves out of time, a wrong result would be produced, just as a note, good in itself, is a producer of discord when sounded out of time, out of place, or out of tune. What then are the adepts doing? It is not possible to state all of their work, but in part it may be said that they assist all good movements by acting on men from behind the scenes through mental influence. They prepare as many men and women who are fit for it so that these men and women may, in their next incarnation, appear in the world as active devotees to the good of the whole human family. And third, they spread now through impulses given in many places a philosophy of life which will gradually affect the race mind and thus prepare people to change and evolve yet further until all such human evils disappear and better days and people reappear. In conclusion, the existence of Mahatmas is considered essential to the evolution of humanity. These beings who have transcended the limitations of the physical world serve as guides and teachers for humanity's ongoing development. The presence of the Mahatmas is not only a privilege, but also a necessity for spiritual progress. Their wisdom and guidance allow humanity to evolve spiritually, bridging the gap between the worldly and the divine. Theosophy makes clear that evolution, both spiritual and material, demands such beings to assist in the elevation and transformation of human consciousness. Without the influence of the Mahatmas, humanity would lack the guidance needed to reach its true potential. And with that, we can open it up to questions and thoughts, so forth.
Thank you, Kathy. Really important topic, and I think we should revisit this more often. A few questions. So, you said there's a Mahatma in all of us, right? I mean, in potentiality. So, can we assume that, in a sense, becoming, if that's not the best word to use, becoming a Mahatma is basically a natural process of evolution, except that in some case, be accelerated a little bit. Is that, or can you maybe help me with that?
Yes, it is part of the natural course of evolution, but we also know that evolution at the stage of self-consciousness of human beings starts with natural impulse, but then it progresses by self-induced and self-devised efforts. So it is up to us to reach for the ideal, to draw out and exercise the will in overcoming the lower tendencies in an effort of purification, to like raise ourselves up to the level where the spiritual faculties we have that are dormant can be awakened. And at that point, one can perceive that there are many higher beings like Mahatmas, and it arouses their interest that one is ready to become a student. And as it's been said, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And then the Mahatma can become like a guide to help train the student and to, understand how those higher levels work. But they can't actually walk that path for us. We have to do it ourselves. They serve as like guide. That's why in Theosophy they've been called like elder brothers, because they've gone through the process, and they can help those who haven't. But as humanity evolves mostly as a group, even though we're all one and we're all connected, the more that each individual raises himself or herself up, the more it affects the whole mass of humanity. And it's said in, because it's part of the memory of the soul that that Mahatmas exist, the mass of humanity will come to this idea in the course of time and evolution. But we can certainly do our part to keep the idea alive, to act as a leavening for the whole mass, to keep the idea present that there is higher planes, and that we are on this progressive ladder of evolution. There is more beyond the desire nature and fulfilling desires, personal desires that, at the end of the lifetime, disappear, degrade, don't, do anything for anybody ultimately.
You said on one of your slides that the choice that Mahatmas make to stay back and not accept Nirvana is out of absolute compassion and not duty. What is the difference between the two?
Oh, that's a good question. the difference between duty and compassion. It is said that if the Mahatma does enter Nirvana, it's an immensely long, nearly incalculable period of time for a human to understand, but that at some point they do come out of that state, or they wish to come out of that state to, we assume, evolve even higher. There could be like more to learn even besides that, if we can even imagine it. So there's no like real penalty, but when the Mahatma stays back to help all others, it is in a sense a duty to the Mahatma himself or herself, because we're all one. So the fact that some beings haven't awakened to higher principles, higher spiritual realms, means it's sort of like the story of Arjuna. One's loved ones may not be at the same stage, and because we're all one, it makes almost more sense to help everybody in that great Manvantaric cycle to achieve the same level, and then we can all experience this nirvana or rest, and no one is left out. So the compassion and duty, while seemingly separate, do kind of maybe fuse at that higher level. The compassion is duty and the duty is compassion. Compassion has been called the law of laws. So if we look at it from that point, that highest realm, then it is our duty to be compassionate. Guess we could say.
So how can we, how can we prepare ourselves to be able to recognize a Mahatma? How can we, many people get fooled, right? When someone comes and says they are a guru, or, how do we, Theosophists, how do we train ourselves
to be awake to the truth and not be unaware of illusion? Yeah, that's a really difficult question, because we're still growing and learning, and as was said, a channel is needed, so one has to first have a belief in them, aspire to understand them, engage in purifying the lower nature, which can mean strengthening the will, practicing not giving in to personal desires, focusing on universals. And it can be difficult to, as was said, like, how does one know when a supposed Mahatma is in front of you? You can't know unless your higher faculties are awake and you can see with spiritual sight, because anything like physical on this realm could be an illusion. But basically, if the being is expresses these highest ideals and acts in the highest interests of the whole of humanity, which can be difficult to discern, that would be that would be like a key, though their methods can be difficult to understand, because in our limited perspective, we can't see karma from a vaster space, from an overview of many, many lifetimes. So it seems that we have to do our best to raise ourselves up and use our discernment, use our discrimination, which is part of the sixth principle of Buddhi, and our mind and manas to make the best decisions, best determination we can under the circumstances. And not to forget that things like during, well, if one can meditate and achieve a higher state of consciousness, or definitely when we go to sleep at night, we pass through states of consciousness to become one every night with the highest self during deep sleep, bringing some of that awareness back. Sometimes we can be informed of signs and influences through dreams. So there might be a whole series of factors to take into consideration, but it is difficult without seeing on the higher spiritual planes, having our spiritual senses awakened to know for sure. So like HPB has said, don't follow, me, don't follow personalities, look to the message and the work, not necessarily what one says, but what one does. The proof should be in the in one's actions.
Okay. Yeah, so that leads me to my next question. So is true occult training awakening of the buddhi? Is that what it really is?
Yes. I mean, it's said that a Mahatma is someone acting in the highest principles that we have, Manas united to Buddhi, which is the vehicle of Atma. Atma is that one principle that is everywhere and nowhere. There's no place without it. Nothing can be excluded. So it's difficult. We can't conceive of it. So we can't like pinpoint it. That's why in the realm of manifestation, it needs a vehicle, and that's considered buddhi, which is like spiritual discrimination and light, like spiritual light. The light of the logos within each human being. So when our mind is merged in and unified with Buddhi, Manas and Buddhi, fused, a marriage as it's called, then we open up those higher faculties. But it's a gradual process. So we have to like paralyze the lower and make all the personal, temporary, evanescent, illusory things not a factor. And that's so difficult to do and takes many lifetimes. But it's through that progress that we evolve ourselves and open up occult senses, which will help us to perceive truth and to, as it was said, see that there are, it just stands to reason. Enlightened beings have, many people have done this progress, this process, this ladder of evolution, and gotten to higher planes, and that we would be able to perceive them, and that the knowledge of them would be sort of a ubiquitous. They wouldn't be beholden to a body like we are in manifestation, because this is temporary illusion. That kind of covers it. It's one idea leads to another, and then try to bring it back. So it's a self-evolution, and we're evolving the higher faculties as we progress. Ideally, it's possible that some people double down on the personality and get stuck there, or even don't act mindfully like a human. And those beings, everyone's subject to karma, but it can mean difficult retribution to meet in succeeding lives, and it retards one's growth and progress.
Just final question. So you made a good point saying that the master's influence through thought impulses. this is something that we can learn from them too, even at our stage. Um, are we, can we send out good thoughts too, continuously, or as best as we can? Your thoughts?
What we think about expands. So returning to the idea and the ideal the Mahatmas represent, channels our thought, our energy, our mind in that direction. And the more one goes in that direction, the vista will continue to open up. And it is by doing that that we, as the people, sort of in that analogy of someone on a mountain looking down, it's that way that individuals distinguish themselves, and the Mahatmas can take notice of them because they're sort of reaching towards a higher, reaching towards that summit, trying to climb that mountain, so to speak, that the Mahatmas will notice. And when the students ready to learn more, they will appear. And I guess there's numberless ways this can happen. But in any case, some people have written about it somewhat for them. There are several in the theosophical tradition who have talked about it. Not a lot, because their experiences are so interior, it's difficult to convey. But opening up the channel and expressing ourselves as universally as possible, thinking, acting, speaking, doing for others instead of oneself, having compassion, all these virtues become strengthened the more we use them, and draw us closer to that goal, that awakening.
Thank you.
Sure. Just seeing if there's any other points I was going to bring out. It is difficult when we go through difficult times to say, well, where are the Mahatmas? If they could just come and save everybody. But karmically, if we got ourselves into a difficult situation, we have to learn for ourselves how to get out of it. It's just like a child. You can't do their schoolwork for them and expect that they'll learn. They have to go through it themselves. But their beneficent ideation is always available to us if we reach for it. So I guess that concludes the talk, and we'll take a break and return for our study class on the Book of Confidences. About 10 minutes.